Hi everybody, welcome to the Bass Coast Shire Council's third live streamed meeting. I'd like to thank you all for coming along and watching. Hopefully you enjoy and you learn a couple of things as we go through here. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online in accordance with council's live streaming policy and meeting procedure law 2018. The chair and or CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action in their action result inappropriate or unacceptable behaviours and or comments. Thank you. Virtual meeting statement. The COVID-19 Omnibus Bill 2020 provision allows council meeting attendees by electronic means. The requirements of the meeting being open to public is satisfied by the meeting being streamed live to council internet. In the event of a technical issue with live stream, the meeting will be adjourned. Councillors are deemed as being in attendance if they can hear proceedings, they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members, and they can be heard. A reminder to all that mobile phones please be turned off or into emergency mode. And I now go to Councillor Ellis for the statement of acknowledgement.
Thank you, Councillor Tazari. Bass Coast Shire acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first Australians and recognises that they have a unique relationship with the land and the water. Council further recognises that we are situated on the lands of the traditional owners, the Bunurong Boonwurrung, members of the Kulin Nation who have lived here for thousands of years. We offer our respect to the elders, past and present, and through them, all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. I now go to Councillor Fullerton for the councillor statement.
Thank you, Mr. Sari. All members of this council pledge to the Bass Coast Shire community to consider each and every item listed in this evening's agenda, this afternoon's agenda, based on individual merits of each item without bias or prejudice, by maintaining an open mind and disregarding councillors' personal interests so as to avoid any conflict with our public duty. Any councillor having a conflict of interest in an item will make a proper prior disclosure to the meeting and will not participate in the debate or vote on the issue.
Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. Before we proceed to presents and apologies, I might just go through the room to make sure that everybody can hear and everybody can hear everybody else. So I'll start with Councillor Lark.
Present.
Councillor Rothfield.
Yes, can hear perfectly well.
Councillor Fullerton.
I'm here.
Councillor Brown.
No problems.
Councillor Lasserve.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah.
Councillor Ellis.
Present, Mayor Tazari.
Councillor Kent.
Loud and clear.
Okay, very good. Presents and apologies. We are all present. I have no apologies for today. Declaration of interests. I also have no declaration of interests for today. Confirmation of minutes. Item number C.1 Ordinary Meeting held on the 20th of May. Chair to read the motion. Sorry. So can I have somebody move and second that the minutes for the ordinary meeting held on the 20th of May be confirmed? Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Fullerton, seconded Councillor Kent. All in favour? Councillor Tazari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. And against? Councillor Brown, carried. Ordinary meeting held on the 17th of June. So can I have somebody please move and second that we accept the minutes held on the 17th of June? Councillor Fullerton and second Councillor Rothfield. All in favour? Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Public question time. Now we have a few questions, so I will read the questions and our CEO, Ms. Wasty, will read the responses. So we have two questions from Kevin Griffin. The first one is regarding the Montague Recycles and Visy. At what stage of negotiations between Montague Recycles and Visy was council made aware that Montague Recycles would be seeking a variation of $1.7 million, 1.716,817 for the waste services collection contract C.1 6005 and $114,155 for management of the Inverloch Montague Transfer Station contract?
Through the Mayor, council officers were advised on the 31st of March on the need for a variation.
Thank you, Ms. Wasty. And part two, as council has acknowledged that the unexpected massive contract variation for environmental monitoring C19015 was due to a flawed specification issued by the council, what is council doing to ensure that council's procurement process will be improved in order to prevent similar errors from occurring in the future?
Through the Mayor, council acknowledges the specification used for this tender did not reference the new EPA environmental monitoring requirements. Noting that this is not a systemic procurement process issue, council continually reviews its processes and procedures to identify opportunities for process and efficiency of improvements.
Thank you, Ms. Wasty. Question number two comes from Graham Jolly, and it's there's two questions, and it is, first one is regarding the draft budget. The 2019-20 budget showed on page 61 and 62 33 capital works projects. When each quarterly financial report were reported to ratepayers, the number of listed projects increased from 33 to 131 to 136 to 145 up to a date of the 31st of March 2020. Why was there additions to capital works projects, and why were they not included in the draft budget or budget for reading at the time? Ms. Wasty.
Through the Mayor, council includes as part of its annual budget documentation a schedule of capital works. This listing includes capital renewal and upgrade expenditure grouped by infrastructure category: roads, footpaths and cycleways, bridges and drainage. Specific details of individual projects within these categories are reported during the financial year in the quarterly capital works report, an attachment to the quarterly report on major initiatives, finances and capital. The detailed information provided during the year results in an increase in the number of projects listed. In addition, responses to emergency events and natural disasters experienced during the year and/or funding opportunities through the state and federal governments will give rise to additional projects being completed by council. These instances will result in a further increase in the number of projects listed in the quarterly report.
Thank you, Ms. Wasty. And part two to Graham's questions. The draft budget 2021 shows on page 58 and 59 a listing of capital works projects. 38 projects are shown. Will this listing be explained when reported in the first quarterly financial report? If so, why and by how many, and why is council not showing all projects to the ratepayers in the draft budget paper?
Through the Mayor, the first quarterly report to council in the 2021 financial year will contain an expanded number of capital works projects. The additional projects will, as explained above, include deferred capital projects carried over from 2019-20 and further detail on the specific infrastructure renewal projects that are reported at an aggregated level in the budget documentation.
Thank you, Ms Wasty. Question number 3 from Jennifer Thorne, and Jennifer also has 2 parts to her question. Inverloch erosion. In view of the land subject to inundation overlays for Inverloch prepared by Environment, Land, Water and Planning Victoria State Government, why is construction of a new building allowed with the areas defined on the maps?
Through the Mayor, the land subject to inundation overlay triggers the need for planning permission for most developments within areas affected by a 1 in 100-year flood or any other area determined by the Floodplain Management Authority. The purpose of the overlay is not to prohibit development, but to ensure that development maintains the free passage and temporary storage of floodwaters, minimises flood damage and is compatible with local drainage conditions.
And part 2, in view of the increasing risk of coastal erosion from rising seawaters and the current erosion occurring on the Inverloch Surf Beach, why is construction of a new building and the infrastructure allowed within the areas likely to be affected in the medium term?
Through the Mayor, an assessment of proposed developments is completed on a case-by-case basis and includes seeking the advice of the relevant floodplain manager.
Thank you, Ms Wasty. The next question is from Alan Grover, and it's regarding a proposal or a 66 lot development in San Remo. And the question reads, the plan for a proposed 66 lot development on two of the acreage lots in Small Court San Remo only shows one access point, which will conservatively result in at least 132 additional vehicles coming and going to and from Small Court and trying to access Shetland Heights, dangerously close to the significant blind spot crest. I asked Council to reconsider access to this proposed estate and insist on a second access point as a matter of safety and urgency. Ms Wasty.
Through the Mayor, a planning application for this site has not yet been received by Council. Once received, access to any future development will be assessed in accordance with the provisions of the Bass Coast Planning Scheme.
Thank you. Question 5 comes from Keith Godridge, and it's there's 2 parts to Keith's questions regarding Inverloch Surf Parade shared footpath. Question number 1, why has the shared footpath project in Surf Parade Inverloch from Veronica Street to the Surf Clubhouse not progressed despite being funded and designed? And part 2, what is the program for its completion? Ms Wasty.
Through the Mayor, the Surf Parade Shared Path project is currently underway and is working through the requisite consents and approvals required. The program for its completion will be informed when those requisite consents and approvals are required.
Thank you, Ms Wasty. Question number 6 is from Andrew Marston, and it's regarding the Cowes Cultural and Community Centre. Council has published that the redevelopment of the Cowes Cultural and Community Centre is estimated to provide $51.8 million benefit to the local economy over the life of the project, and the figure was reached by a consultant's economic impact and cost benefit analysis report. When will the report be released to the public as promised in the response to a public question in May 2020?
Through the Mayor, the cost benefit analysis and economic impact assessment for the Cowes Cultural and Community Centre produced by SGS Economics and Planning will be uploaded to the project webpage by the end of the week.
Thank you, Ms Wasty. Question 7 comes from John Trite, and it's regarding the recycling, Visy Industries and Recycling. Will the Mayor make public the annual tonnage of a recycled material that was recycled to Visy Industries for the financial year of 2019 and 2020?
Through the Mayor, 5,430 tonnes of recyclable material was sent to Visy Recycling in the 2019-2020 financial year from Council's curbside collection and transfer stations.
Thank you, Ms Wasty. Question 8 comes from Tim O'Brien, and it's 2 questions, and it's regarding the Holden Proving Ground. Question 1, given that Phillip Island, one of Australia's most visited tourism destinations, is a traffic cul-de-sac with a single entry pipeline from Melbourne, the Bass Highway, has council considered the benefits of placing a tourism gateway on that pipeline on the entry to Bass Coast region, a large cultural and tourism centre to intercept, filter and fan tourists across the whole of the region to the Bunurong Coastal Drive, Cape Patterson, Venus Bay, Tarwin and even Cape Wittrap, thus boosting tourism and employment across the whole of the region instead of filtering them all to the island first. Ms. Wasty.
Through the Mayor. No, at this stage, Council has not considered using the Holden Proving Ground site as a tourism gateway. The site is currently privately owned and Council has existing accredited visitor information centres and services located in Inverloch, Cowes and Newhaven.
And question number 2, is council aware the Holden Proving Ground, if purchased by the state government and council, has the location, infrastructure, parking and access and suitable structures with wide span spaces which could be modified for such a purpose, and other structures that would support a Federation University campus, Bunurong Cultural Centre, Wildlife Research Centre, even Holden Museum? Ms. Wasty.
Through the Mayor, Council is aware of the existing infrastructure. However, the site is currently privately owned and Council has not considered the potential public use of the infrastructure on site.
Thank you, Ms. Wasty, and thank you everybody for those questions. It's always very popular, the amount of questions coming through, so I thank you all. And I hope and trust that those answers are satisfactory. Brings us to item number, letter number E, petitions, joint letters, deputations and correspondence, of which we have none. So item number, notice of motions, F, item number F1, 2020 live streaming by Councillor Ellis. Councillor Ellis, would you like to briefly speak, put forward your notice of motion?
I'd like to briefly read the notice of motion for consideration. Thank you, Councillor Tazari.
Thank you.
My motion is that council confirm that the implementation of live streaming of council meetings is a success, ceases the current 6-month trial, does not ask for a report on its effectiveness, and resolves to continue live streaming of all council's ordinary and special meetings into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Can I have somebody second that motion? Councillor Kent. Councillor Ellis, you now may speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mayor Tazari. This has been part of a 4-year conversation, and I've been one of the people that were in it at the beginning, and here we are at the end of the conversation. The feedback I'm getting from the community about the effectiveness of live streaming, I believe overwhelmingly proves that live streaming is a success. And the fact that we are now live streaming this meeting kind of goes to it. It's almost a no-brainer. I don't think we'll ever go back to not live streaming. And I believe that the need for a report in 6 months' time and then a council decision is superseded by this fact that we're actually doing it now. And also that the added costs of doing it is so minimal that it should be considered a fundamental way that we do business, and that it should be monitored as part of council's general business, the way that we monitor and oversight and apply scrutiny to everything that we do, and that it is now an operational matter and should just be considered as a normal part of business that's overseen by the audit committee and other structures that we've got in place to monitor it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Kent.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm very willing to admit that I had reservations over this at the start, and my reservations to me have been disproved. I'm hearing the community, they're supporting this. Council officers seem to be going well with it, and certainly I think it's a strategy to address our community who can't get to the meetings and our special needs people too who can't get to the meetings. And I can't see us going back on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this notice of motion? No? Yeah, yes, sorry, Councillor Whelan.
I think this is regrettable that we're just throwing process out the door on this, and I wonder why one would bring it up at the moment, with its main effect being to wedge people that might support it, but also believe that we should be considering the bigger picture. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and that's why we're doing virtual meetings. I think they're going well at this point as well, and it's all very well to say that people with a disability can now participate by viewing the meetings and things, but that's all very well if they're able to hear the meetings. So the point is, what we're doing is not adequate. We need to be considering the bigger picture. We also need to be considering what's going to happen with the Local Government Act beyond the period that the Minister has, or the Local Government Act. It's got a sunset clause on it. We need to know how we'll do it. If we get back to face-to-face meetings, do we still allow virtual participation, which is something I'd very much favour. This is a half-baked cake, and to actually say that the job's been done at this point in time is so premature as to be ludicrous. The idea that there is a virtual, what was the term? Added costs are minimal. Well, you can't say that without stating what the costs are. And I've seen a lot more people going around to set up and make sure these meetings work well. And I do say categorically, I believe they're going very well, and I can't see us going back either. But there's so many issues that aren't dealt with at this point in time as to be absolutely premature.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Councillor Rothfield.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Whelan there. We're doing live streaming. We're forced into it, and it's actually working really well. And I support what we're doing absolutely wholeheartedly. I feel this is really a decision for the next council to make. I think it's wrong doing it at this stage. I think, they do need to have a report in order to analyse how well it's doing, what the costs are, what the closed captioning would be after COVID. This is great. This is under an emergency declaration that we're working as we are now. But I do think that in the long term, I think we need to have a look at what the next step is, and process shouldn't be thrown out of the window. We should go through what we have previously established, and that is a report, a trial to be done, and have a look at the analysis at the end.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this notice of motion as it reads? Councillor Lark. You're on mute, Councillor Lark. 3.5 months we've been doing this.
I support and have supported live streaming all along during the last 3.5 years. Pardon me. However, I agree with Councillor Whelan and Councillor Rothfield that, that the trial should run its course, and we look to improving what the offering is in relation to live streaming, and engage with the community for their suggestions too at the end of that trial. My apologies for the coughing. I've been tested. I'm okay.
Councillor Lark, would you like to just pause for a second and have a drink of water, or have you got water there?
I would if possible.
Just pause for a second and have a drink. Even though he was leaving the screen. What do I do there, Robert? Everybody just look lovely. And I resisted the temptation to say anything about Councillor Fullerton.
Thank you, Mayor Tessari.
No worries,
Just in summary, I absolutely wholeheartedly support live streaming. I just think the trial should run its course, and we look to an improved model with community engagement at the end of that trial period.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Councillor Fullerton.
Thank you, Mr. Sarri. Yeah, look, I agree with the others who have spoken just now, but we gave a commitment for a 6-week trial, 6-month trial or whatever. The first one was very successful. The second one had a few flaws. Hopefully this one will be good, but we do have bugs to iron out in it. And yeah, I look forward to the report at the end, and hopefully it'll proceed and be better than we've had so far.
Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. Councillor Lasser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also appreciate what the councillors have said and Councillor Ellis's intent on putting this notice of motion forward. And, you know, I spoke out against live streaming in the first place, but I've seen that in doing it in this format, but we're all in different locations primarily. And I'd like to see what the cost still would be to bring it in-house again with captions for hearing impaired people. And I don't think we've got that far. I think I'd like to hear what the community say. Has it been a success for them? You know, those types of things. We have changed the timing of the meetings. So I think there's a lot of factors that I would like to hear, as Councillor Lark said, what the community have got to say. I've changed my mind about, you know, the ease of doing this. It's been great. It's kept the community engaged. And I, you know, commend council and council staff are pulling it together, but there are a few things that we need to iron out first. So I'd wait until the end of the trial.
Thank you, Councillor Lasser. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this notice of motion? I'm only looking at one more that's left. No. So, Councillor Ellis, would you like to speak, put this to a vote or speak to the motion?
I'll just thank everybody for their honest candour and their participation. I think we've all had our say. I think we just put it to the vote. Thank you, Mayor Desari.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. All in favour of the notice of motion as it reads, please raise your hands. Councillor Tassari, Councillor Ellis and Councillor Kent. And against? Councillor Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Lasserve and Whelan. Lost. Item number F2, Holden Proving Grounds. Councillor Ellis, if you could put forward your notice of motion without speaking to it, please.
Thank you, Mayor Tassari. The motion I put reads as follows. Point 1, request an urgent meeting with the Minister for Planning to discuss options for protection of this site. Point 2, advocate for the protection of the site through formal recognition and protection within the Statement of Planning Policy. And number 3, request a report be prepared for the August 2020 Council meeting identifying options for the environmental protection of the site. The report should explore Council's options in regard to formal recognition of the site, including the introduction of an overlay within the Bass Coast planning scheme. Thank you, Mayor Tassari.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Can I have somebody second that notice of motion, please? Councillor Kent. Councillor Ellis, would you like to speak to your motion?
I would, thank you, Mayor Tassari. This is our last best chance to leave a significant, precious environmental legacy. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to do something for the environment. This 2,000 acres of bushland contains over a quarter of the remnant vegetation on the whole eastern side of Western Port. It's rare and it's unique. Apart from this place, there are no large patches of bush left anywhere between Mount Worth, Bunyip State Park and Wilson's Prom. This was once an extensive West Gippsland forest. This fragile bushland should belong to the community of Southern Gippsland and the people of Victoria. There are numerous strong, loud voices calling for their state, their federal government and their local government to ensure that this remnant of bush isn't lost to sand mining. Sand mining is everyone's worst fear for this precious, fragile place. Over 60 days ago, Councillor Lasserve, via a motion, asked the state government to buy the HPG. We await a ministerial response. That's 60 days we've been waiting. So point 1 today calls for an urgent meeting with the Minister for Planning. As a council, we can do the work on the overlays to protect the Holden woodlands. We need the Minister for Planning to work with us to fund and expedite this process. It could take 18 months. It could cost $400,000 across 2 budgets. At the moment, there is no current budget for it, and it isn't in the draft budget for 2021. I understand that people are making very vehement submissions that it should be, and without preempting any outcomes there, I would suggest that is the way forward. However, it's still $400,000, and we need to work with the state government to expedite and fund it. The best way to ensure that this special replace remains as it is for the state or the Commonwealth Government to purchase it on behalf of future generations of Australians and Victorians. And this report, due for the next meeting, will outline the next best way of preserving this habitat for rare and endangered species. And we need to send a clear message that we hold this unique parcel of West Gippsland coastal forest precious above all else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Kent.
Yes, I'd just like to state that the potential outcomes from this report for us to act upon could take, the process could be over 2 years. We need to start now, immediately. Otherwise, we're just going to be left behind. I'd also like Councillor Ellis to maybe consider an extra point on his motion in regards to negotiating with the federal government too, but that's for his consideration. I believe that if
Councillor
we
Kent,
need
can I just
to,
step in there? Would you like to put an amendment to that, or suggest an amendment to the motion?
yes, I'd like to suggest an amendment.
Okay, can we get the wording to the suggestion? Hang on, Councillor Kent.
Point of order, Mayor Tazari. I believe somebody that has
Yeah,
put
no,
or
that is-
seconded the motion can't move an amendment on it.
That is correct, Councillor Ellis. Thank you. I'll just say Councillor LaServe has got her hand up. Councillor Kent, if I can just go to Councillor LaServe.
So, Mr Mayor, I'll certainly move that amendment to the notice of motion
And what wording would you like to use?
regarding that the council do some advocate to the federal government for investment in purchasing the property under the National Parks program that they've just put forward.
Okay, so that's...
And that we
that's
lobby both the federal members that would be are responsible for this shire.
Okay, can I just get a confirmation from our governance team that that is now item 4? So can I get it reread if I could, please?
From me or from the governance?
From governance, that they've worded it correctly, and then I'll make sure that you're happy with the wording that's come forward. We're just trying to catch up with the typing as we speak. Councillor LaServe.
Yep.
Okay, so the wording as it stands for point 4.
So through you, Mr Mayor, advocate to the federal government to purchase the property and lobby both the federal members responsible for the Bass Coast Shire Council.
Are you happy with that, Councillor LaServe?
Yes, if there's any other contribution from other councillors that want to add anything to it at this stage.
Sure.
No, but I'm happy.
Forward at this point. Councillor Ellis, are you happy to accept that as part of your notice of motion?
Except for one point of order, Mayor Tazari, there is only one federal member that covers the Bass Coast. Since the redistribution, Greg Hunt's no longer our representative.
That is correct.
I accept that, thank you.
Governance, can I just get that reread if I could, please?
Advocate to the federal government to purchase the property and lobby the federal member responsible for Bass Coast Shire Council.
Councillor Ellis,
Under-
you're happy with Ellis serve? You're happy with that?
Yeah, and is that, do we need to acknowledge the new Commonwealth Government National Park funding allocation that's just been announced, and they talk about the need to boost our tourism and infrastructure sector?
Councillor
I think so.
Serve, I think if we've just said lobby the federal government, that will take in all aspects of money available from the federal government.
Okay, thank you.
Are you happy with that as it was read?
Yep, thank you very much.
Councillor Ellis, you're happy to accept that as an amendment to your notice of motion? Can I just hear you? Sorry, Councillor Ellis.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, you're happy to second that amendment to the notice of motion?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Councillor Serve, would you like to speak to the notice of motion as it reads?
Look, I'm just happy to support this. We've seen that there's been many suggestions of the way forward, but I think it's at a critical point now, because we've 60 days in to yet another notice of motion to try and put the brakes on this, and I don't think we're getting any traction. So I think that we really need to ramp up what we're doing so that we get the traction to be at that negotiations very soon.
Thank you, Councillor Serve. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this notice of motion? Councillor Lark. Microphone, Councillor Lark. Microphone.
I just wanted to clarify that it was appropriate under the meeting rules, Councillor Kent, who seconded the original motion, could second the amendment.
If I could get an answer to that, yeah. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the amendment to the notice of motion can be made with approval of the mover and the seconder. So that's what was sought, and the motion as before council.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lark, would you like to speak to or against the notice of motion? No?
No.
Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Whelan.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned that we haven't got the big statement on this thing, which is that we want to see, the grand vision is how we want to see this site. And I think that's what's needed. And then beyond that, the various activities that council can take could fall out of that. We tend to be prescriptive, and I think that's been the failing of how we've gone about this thus far. So I'll comment on in respect to how the resolution does read. And in respect to point 1, we should be working through our local member on that. She's shown a strong interest in this. I've seen social media of her attending there with the supporting group, and we should really be working through her and engaging with her, particularly if we want to get in to see the Minister for Planning. Our opportunity to do that as well enhanced if we got the local member on side. So I think that's something we should have been considering. I think it seems to me that while we can mention sand mining in our chat, we don't mention it in the resolution. Sand mining, I agree, is the biggest threat. And the problem is that I'm not sure about this, but because I'm now delving into my limited understanding of planning legislation and extractive industries legislation. But I believe that the extractive industries legislation would probably override those things. I'm not sure about that, but there's an issue of concern around that. But the piece of legislation that has the potential to sit over the whole lot of this and drive it, and it's stated overrides other legislation, is the distinctive areas landscapes legislation. So I think it's important that we're actually pursuing that line of research and discussion with the department to make sure that the distinctive areas landscapes adequately represents it. It's a no-brainer to me that we would be doing that, but I just put it there as something I think we need to be considering.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this notice of motion? No. Councillor Ellis, would you like to finish up or put it to a vote up? Councillor Brown. Sorry, Councillor Ellis. Councillor, I'll just acknowledge Councillor Brown had his hand up.
Just a point of order. Can I just confirm whether the next stage will be voting on the amendment or on the motion itself?
So we will be voting on the amendment to the notice of motion, and then we will vote on the. Sorry.
Moved and seconded the amendment, so you will be voting on the amended motion.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, Councillor Brown. We will be voting on the notice of motion with the amendment in it. So you don't want. So back to you, Councillor Ellis. Would you like to speak? Finish up on your notice of motion, or put it to a vote?
I'd just like to briefly mention we've received any number of very passionate and very well-written emails about this, and if I could just read 2 paragraphs from one that I think kind of summarises why we need to make sure this place stays the way it is. And if you'll indulge me for a moment, this email, I won't mention who sent it to me, but it was very passionate and one of many. There is evidence that this large bush area, made up of riparian forest and rare forest bog, is home to southern brown bandicoot, long-nosed bandicoot, leadbeater's possum, white-footed dunnart, powerful owl, and growling grass frog. It is excellent habitat for echidna, wallabies, reptiles, wildflowers, and has ancient specimens of Baliscian grass trees, which I know are very rare and endangered all over the place. It is a council responsibility, this is what I'm told, and I believe this is so. It is a council responsibility under the law to have the correct overlays on land that has endangered species upon it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. We'll put it to a vote. All in favour of the notice of motion as it reads, please raise your hands. Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Okay, brings us to our Mayor and Councillor's report. My report has been sent through and will be minuted when the minutes go forward, as too will all the councillors moving forward as well, as per our previous meetings. That brings us now to reports requiring council decision. And we have item number H.1 Planning Application 190055. And introduce the report is Mr. Sturt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present an application to re-subdivide land into 2 lots at 103 Ventnor Beach Road, Ventnor. The application has been assessed and it is recommended that council resolve to issue a notice of refusal given the application does not accord with the policies and objectives of the Bass Coast Planning Scheme. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sturton. Can I have somebody, Councillor Fullerton, you're moving that motion, and your microphone's on mute, Councillor Fullerton. Yep.
No, I have an amendment to move, Mr. Shari, that prepared.
You have an amendment or an alternate?
Sorry, I have an alternative motion to put, and
Thank
that
you.
motion is for approval.
Councillor Fullerton, if I could just ask for that to be put up on the screen. If you would like to briefly describe your alternative motion without speaking to it, Councillor Fullerton.
Yes, in simple terms, the motion is to approve the subdivision. With the conditions noted.
So it's just up on screen now. So if you would like to read your recommendation.
Yep, okay. In relation to the planning permit 190055 for the re-subdivision of land located at 103 Ventnor Beach Road, Ventnor, council resolves to issue a planning permit subject to the following conditions, and those conditions are listed. There's probably no need to read them right through.
I prefer you didn't. Thanks very much, Councillor Fullerton. Can I have somebody second that motion? Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Fullerton, you may speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Look, this is probably one of the weak points of our planning scheme, in that it's the subject land, as numerous blocks around this are very small acreages. This is about 11 acres, I believe. This is more than, it's probably best described as a realignment of boundaries rather than a subdivision. The land is currently in 2 titles, owned jointly by 2 parties. And what we're proposing to, what the applicants are proposing to do is to split the land in half so that they actually have half each. And there's a dwelling on one, and the permit will allow a dwelling to be built on the second block as which will be subject to a further planning application. But there are 5 or 6 similar sized blocks in that area, and they all have dwellings on them. So there's no rhyme or reason why the new one shouldn't. It is zoned, it's a farm zone, but it's only 11 acres. It's not productive land. The back is be sensitively planted out significantly, and unfortunately it's caught up as a farm zone with a minimum of 100 acre subdivision, but it's an anomaly in our scheme, and I'm more than happy to recommend that the subdivision be approved as submitted.
Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. Before we go to you, Councillor Rothfield, and we go any further, I forgot to confirm when the screen was shared with the amendment that we could all see and hear. So can I just get a confirmation that we could all see the amendment on the screen and we could all hear Councillor Fullerton? So if we could have a show of hands, that's Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Thank you very much. Councillor Rothfield, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think sometimes common sense has to prevail. I know that by crossing the T's and dotting the I's, that some of these policies are contravened under the planning policy framework and planning scheme. But the area is in total 6 hectares, and then we're talking about preserving productive farmland. It's 6 hectares. So as I say, I think common sense has to prevail. This is dividing 6 hectares into basically 3 each, not quite, but something like that. And I just think that it makes common sense to allow it. I think it's unfortunate sometimes that we have to go through the nitpicking and conditions that we do.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this motion? Councillor Whelan.
I'll be very quick. It's my understanding it doesn't give the right to build on the other block at this point in time. That would be subject to a further permit. Now, I know Councillor Fullerton said that, but he also said both things, really. Look, one of the things that's stated in the report is that it doesn't achieve the minimum subdivision lot areas, but nor does the existing arrangement. And the existing arrangement is far less rational than what's being proposed. So there's a question of semantics here too, because we discussed that it's called a subdivision, but in actual fact, it's a boundary realignment. They're the same thing apparently in planning terms, but I think they tell you a different story. And I think it gets a more rational outcome. Thank you. Thank you,
Councillor Whelan. Councillor Laserve.
Mr. Mayor, could I just have some clarification around a point on page 27? It's in the dot point 3 down the page where it says about the section 173 agreement applied to any permit issued could prevent this, meaning that for an application for a dwelling. So is that statement saying that a realignment of these boundaries would prohibit under a 173 agreement, or we would be enforcing a 173 agreement with the owner?
Mr. Sturton, if I could.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a section 173 agreement could be applied as part of this resolution to the land to prevent a dwelling. As I understand, with the alternate recommendation, that doesn't form part of what Councillor Fullerton has provided.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sturton. Thank you, Mr. Sturton. Anybody else like to speak to or against the motion? No? Councillor Fullerton, would you like to summarise or put it to a vote?
I will summarise it briefly. There's a long history with this land. It was actually approved in 2006, I think it was, but the applicants didn't realise they had to do a formal closure on it, and so it lapsed, but the application is to redo it now. The 173 agreement, I totally dispute the need or any requirement for that. What we end up with is a series of blocks of land. They're all small acreages, 4 or 5, 6 acres. Every one of them has a dwelling, and there's absolutely no reason to exclude a dwelling from this one. But it will be a planning permit will be required for a dwelling in the future. But yeah, we certainly should not be excluding that future need. So no, look, I'm more than happy to support that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. We'll put it to a vote. All in favour of the motion as the alternate motion as it reads. Councillor Tessari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Lasserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Item number H2, another planning application 190137 to be introduced by Mr. Sturton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present an application to develop the land for the purposes of a single dwelling at 31 Silverleaves Avenue, Silverleaves. The planning permit is required as the land is subject to inundation overlay. The application has been referred to Melbourne Water, who have given their approval to the proposal. The application has been assessed against the Bass Coast planning scheme, and it is recommended that Council resolve to issue a planning permit in line with the amended recommendations conditions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sturton. Can I have somebody move and second? Councillor Fullerton, you'd like to move and second?
No. I have an alternative motion.
You have an alternative motion to this one? Okay. I'm just, if we could watch your alternative motion, Councillor Fullerton.
The alternative is to defer the matter until the next meeting, till the August meeting.
Okay, so we have Councillor Fullerton would like to defer this application until the August meeting. Can I have somebody second that? Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Fullerton, you may speak to your alternate motion.
Thank you, Mr. Sari. Look, the plans as submitted are clearly wrong. There's a DDO 1 down there, a 7-metre height limit. When checking the actual levels as provided, the dwelling and some on the corners may be about 7 metres, but it's certainly well above that in the middle of the building. So there is consideration. There was an amendment to what we were circulated with recently to require that to be reduced to the 7 metres. But yeah, I'd like to see it before we actually approve it.
Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. Councillor Rothfield.
Yes, no, I've got nothing further to add, really, Mr. Mayor, just that I think if there's such a grey area, I'd like to know exactly what the situation is before voting on it.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Whelan.
I support the intent of what Councillor Fullerton's put forward. Is it? I ask, I guess, of Mr. Sturton, is it appropriate to put the next meeting given? Is that? And you know probably Councillor Fullerton better than I would anyway. Is it reasonable that we expect them to have the plans in that time?
Councillor Sturton, if I Councillor Sturton.
Yes.
Mr. Sturton, if I could get an answer to that.
We would have to go back to the applicant, Mr. Mayor, on that one. In terms of a process, this recommendation is calling for amended plans with a permit granted in foreshadowing those. So what we're asking for is the amended plans to still be produced and then be presented in August. So we can definitely take that back to the applicant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So we're working towards that, Councillor Whelan.
Yeah, no, I'll support the resolution, Councillor Fullerton's resolution.
Thanks, Councillor Whelan. Would anyone else like to speak to or against the amendment from Councillor Fullerton? Would you like to summarise, Councillor Fullerton, or put it to a vote?
That's fine, Mr. Mayor. We could vote on that one.
Okay, all in favour of the alternate motion to defer until August? Councillor Tessari, Councillor Lark, Councillor Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Lasserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Item number H3, another planning application 190324 to be introduced by Mr. Sturton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present an application to subdivide land into 2 lots at 27 McRae Avenue Cowes. The application was advertised and received 9 objections. The objections mostly centred upon neighbourhood character, vegetation and traffic concerns. The application has been referred to relevant authorities and assessed against the Bass Coast Planning Scheme. It concludes that the proposal aligns with the relevant planning provisions and recommends Council issue a notice of decision to grant the planning permit. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. Can I have somebody, Councillor Whelan, you'd like to move that motion?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an alternate resolution that the officers have.
Okay, if I could ask for that to be put up on our screen. And if I could ask if all councillors can see that screen and still hear, if I could see a show of hands. Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Councillor Whelan, would you like to summarise your recommendation, please?
That in relation to planning permit application 190324 for a 2-lot subdivision and vegetation removal located at 27 McRae Avenue Cowes, Council resolves to issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a permit for the following reasons, which go largely to the locals' view of neighbourhood character and also the preservation of the coastal vegetation.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Can I have somebody second that motion, please? Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Whelan, you now may speak to your notice of motion.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. What we're seeing is, and we see it in the report, is no distinguishing between the requirement to denser development in the radiating out from the centre of our township at Cowes to the coastal boundary. This is right on the coastal boundary. To treat it as if it's in the centre of Cowes is not appropriate. The subdivision will lead under the bushfire rules and other rules as of right clearance of vegetation. It's coastal vegetation, it's indigenous vegetation, it's part of the habitat. We're starting to merge at this stage into the coastal vegetation, and that needs to be taken account of. I'm concerned that there seems to be a one-size-fits-all in our planning scheme towards these sorts of things. There's not due recognition taken. I think the subdivision would alter the neighbourhood character, and as such, and certainly the neighbours seem to be of that view as well. And I recommend that we are not allow it.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Councillor Rothfield.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, I agree totally. I think that firstly, it's not respecting the neighbourhood character, and they're all much larger blocks. To reduce this block down to 346 square metres and the other one at 400, and such an area which have got nice expansive area blocks, I think is just, as I say, not acknowledging the neighbourhood character, and I think that it's inappropriate for that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this motion? And I'm just sorry, Councillor Fullerton.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Sarah. Yeah, look, that area it's a narrow street. McRae Avenue is very narrow. There's access to the beach at the end of it. There's a track which goes across the foreshore. It's always very, very busy. The particular dwelling that we're talking about is a holiday home that's actually rented out, and it actually accommodates quite a few people, and it already has a significant parking issue there. I see in putting another house similar there on the block, it's just going to unacceptably add to the congestion in that quiet area of Cowes, which is actually a very nice quiet area.
Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. Would anyone else like to speak to or against the motion put forward? No? Councillor Whelan, would you like to summarise or put it to a vote?
Happy to put it to a vote.
All in favour of the alternate motion put forward by Councillor Whelan, please raise your hands. Councillor Tassari, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Whelan, Ellis and Kent, and against? Councillor Laserve and Councillor Lark. Carried. Item number H4, it's another planning issue to be introduced by Mr. Sturton again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider the submissions received regarding planning scheme amendment C150. This proponent-led amendment seeks to rezone the site from low-density residential zone to general residential zone Schedule 1, and also remove the significant landscape overlay Schedule 1 to the land at 126 Shetland Heights Road, San Remo. The amendment was exhibited for 1 month from 16th April 2020 to 16th May 2020 and attracted 27 submissions, which received 19 letters of support, 3 neutral responses and 5 objections. It is recommended the Council progress this amendment and request that the Minister for Planning appoint an independent planning panel to consider the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sturton. Could I have somebody move and second this recommendation as it reads? Councillor Laserve, Councillor Kent. Councillor Laserve, would you like to speak to this recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it explains itself really quite well. I think it's this is a long-winded one, historic. It's just trying to sort out the better arrangement for the people that are residing in this complex compound, if I could say it like that. So I think that we need to go and get a directive from the planning minister as a way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Laserve. Councillor Kent.
Nothing much to add. It's just a bit of a mess in there and needs to be cleaned up.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Would anyone else like to speak to or against? No. Councillor Laserve, would you like to put it to a vote?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
All in favour of the recommendation as it reads? Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Item number H5, Local Government Power Purchase Agreement to be presented by Ms Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to review Council's participation in a renewable energy procurement project. At the 17th of July 2019 Ordinary Council meeting, Council resolved to enter the tender process for procuring 30% of its electricity through a power purchase agreement for renewable energy with the MAV as procurement agent. Based on work undertaken by the Local Government Power Purchase Agreement Working Group and advice from MADIX, this report now recommends that Council commit to the Local Government Power Purchase Agreement by joining with partner councils to tender process brokered by Darwin City Council to find the best PPA offer available in the market. It also recommends that Council increase its nominated electricity load from 30% to 100% to align with the declaration of a climate emergency and realise greater savings. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Kennedy. Can I have somebody move and second this recommendation as it reads? Councillor Whelan and seconded. Councillor Whelan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I think this is a good idea. I did look at it with some trepidation as to whether it was closing off options for council to use its buying power for a local project, and I'm absolutely assured that's not the case. So it allows us in a sweep of the pen really to become 100% renewable in our energy use here in Bass Coast, which of course in the climate emergency context is a good thing to do. It's a great cooperative project between a number of councils, and we're getting a bit of benefit of the clout and leverage that we get from some of the bigger brothers and sisters we have up around the metropolitan area, Darebin being one of those. And the reason they're the lead agency was going to be MAV, and legal advice suggested it was best to be run by a nominated council. We get access to some incredible knowledge that of officers within those councils that is incredibly beneficial to us. It's flexible. The key point, it's flexible and allows us to withdraw demand at some point in time to help put towards a local project which will grow green jobs here in Bass Coast. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Councillor Ellis.
I think my colleague Councillor Whelan's covered it nicely. I can't add any more to that. I think he's done a good job in representing this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this recommendation? No. Councillor Whelan, would you like to summarise or put it to a vote?
Put it to a vote.
All in favour of the recommendation as it reads? Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Lasserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Item number H6, Waste Service Contract, to be presented by Ms Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Wonthaggi Recyclers are currently contracted to deliver Council's waste collection service contract and operate its transfer stations at Inverloch and Wonthaggi. This is a 10-year contract that ends in August 2027. As a result of global changes in the recyclable sector, a force majeure event was triggered and Council approved a variation known as Variation 1 for both contracts. This variation was for the cost of delivering these services over a 2-year period and expired on the 30th of June 2020. The purpose of this report is to seek a second round of variations, which is referred to as V2 in the report, for the Waste Services Collection Contract C.1 6005 and the management of the Inverloch and Wonthaggi Transfer Station Contract C.1 6040 to ensure a continuation of service. The proposed variation is for the full cost of the provision of the services under the contract for the 2-year period. The increase in cost to deliver this service, so the difference between Variation 1 and Variation 2, is a total of $634,346. Since the June meeting, officers have sought advice on the options available to Council to renegotiate with Wonthaggi Recyclers. The options are detailed in the body of this report, and the preferred option is the one officer recommendation. These variations are proposed for a period of 2 years and allow for the continuation of Bass Coast recyclable materials to be collected and processed while the materials and recycling industry and the state government establish longer-term changes, including a shift to a circular economy. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Kennedy. Can I have somebody move and second this recommendation? Councillor Rothfield, and seconded Councillor Whelan. Councillor Rothfield.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, this is a report that's come back after trying to be accepted last month. So I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but I think that there is a bit of confusion out there in the wider community as to what it actually relates to. The word variation seems to conjure up the fact that we have that there is going to be an additional cost of 1.7 million, which is not the case. If we looked at it and called it instead a contract, because it was actually a contract that we had with the waste collection service, which took place in 2018. The contract was required because of the Green Sword Initiative, which we saw from China, which increased all the costs of recycling. I've gone through this before, so I won't dwell on it. The most important thing that we have got to understand here, that the actual cost to the community for the next 2 years is around the $631,000, roundabout, maybe 633. That is the extra cost that we're incurring, not the 1.7 million. And that's this variation of the for 2 years will then require a further variation in 2 years' time. There's no way, we're not going back to the future. We have a different landscape now in respect to recycling. Up to 2018, at the beginning of 2018, we were able to dump all our rubbish and all our mixed recycling materials. We were dumping that on China's doorstep. That changed. The whole landscape changed at the end of 2017, and we had to address that change. And this, as I say, it's not going to go back. We're always going to have to pay something like this extra than what we used to in the past. The cost, I think it's really important for everybody to know that the actual cost per household per annum for this change is $10 a year. I mean, that's what people must look at. It is not the whole 1.7. That was already in, well, 1.1 million of it was in place in 2018. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Whelan.
Well done, Councillor Rothfield. I've been trying to clarify that, seek words to clarify that. I think you did that pretty well. The key point I'll just underline in that is that the first variation came about by a force majeure event. That's an event beyond the control of the contractors. That event is still driving where we are today, and we are currently out of contract effectively in this area. The options, if we don't go with this, is that material goes to landfill, which will cost a lot more. We need to understand that. We also, if there was some notion we could force Wonthaggi recyclers to accept this cost, that's not available. We'd drive them to the wall anyway if it was. It's not available because of the force majeure event. So we just need to be clear on that, because there has been some views around that have clearly misunderstood it and portrayed this as a full cost increase of 1.7 million. I won't go into that. Councillor Rothfield has covered that, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Can I just, if I can, please just pause for 2 minutes while I just seek some clarification, if I can, please. Thank you all. I trust you you filled in that time wisely. I just needed to seek some clarification for 2 seconds, which I'm happy with. So we will continue on. Thank you, Councillor Rothfield, for you.
I think Councillor Laserve is missing.
Oh, she's dropped off.
She is too. Councillor Laserve, are you there? Okay, I'll continue doing what? We can? Okay, so Councillor Laserve, we can continue while we wait for Councillor Laserve to come back. So Councillor Rothfield has spoken to the motion. Councillor Whelan has spoken to the motion. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Kent.
Thank you. I'll fill a spot whilst Councillor Laserve comes back. Look, my biggest concern is that this issue we've dealt with for a 2-year period. The issue's been going longer than that. How long is the community going to put up with the state government not coming up with some options? I just feel as if we're being put out here. We've seen this coming long term, and it's the point I'm trying to make is that we have to come up with a solution. This is just buying off the solution, buying off the situation for a period of time, which I agree with. But we need that solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Would anyone else like to speak to or against the recommendation? Councillor Lark. You're on mute, Councillor Lark. That's 3 strikes now.
I'm glad I'm not playing baseball. I wish to reiterate my opposition to the first contract variation and now a second variation. And in my view, without any meaningful negotiation with Wonthaggi Recyclers Proprietary Limited. After all, the contract is between Council and Wonthaggi Recyclers Proprietary Limited. We appear to be more concerned about Wonthaggi Recyclers Proprietary Limited return on investment instead of negotiating a better outcome for our community. The psyche appears to be that it's okay because Council will simply pass on the increased waste costs associated with this variation and ultimately borne by our ratepayers. By way of interest, the Cleanaway Group has a 50% joint venture interest in Wonthaggi Recyclers Proprietary Limited, and that group for 2019 derived 2.28 billion in revenue. I am concerned with the lack of negotiation in relation to both variations, and so should our community.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Would anyone else? Councillor Brown?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So Council deferred this item from last month, and the reports come back to us. The amounts haven't changed, the figures haven't changed. I had a fair bit to say last month about this item, and I won't repeat all of it, but in essence, I'm still unhappy with it, and I can't see that there's a fair and equitable sharing of the pain between Council and Wonthaggi Recyclers. I mean, it's all falling on Council, and you know, I don't see any evidence of Wonthaggi Recyclers absorbing their fair share of the cost and the pain of this. So I'll be voting against this.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Just so you know, Councillor Brown, we were briefed on this in the last week or so that it was deferred and we were briefed on it. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this notice of motion? No? Okay, Councillor Rothfield, would you like to summarise or put it to a vote?
Yeah, I would. Just a couple of things. First of all, in regards to the EPA, they are certainly progressing their strategy for a circular economy and spending big bucks in that way. And I think you really have to be right in there to understand what's going on with the circular economy. So I wouldn't suggest that we could just throw this back onto the state government. We all have to play our part on this. And regarding the Wonthaggi recyclers and them not sharing the pain, look, you know, we have to accept that the officers have indeed been presented with information. They have been provided with data from Wonthaggi Recyclers, and it's not a matter of who are investors in Wonthaggi Recyclers, because if that's not a reason, because Cleanaway own half the business, that we should just allow a company to literally go to the wall because we decide that they should carry the whole lot. As we are all familiar with big business, they will clean away Wonthaggi Recyclers in a absolute heartbeat if the company is actually not functioning well, and that's the risk that we run. I think that we have to accept that the officers have indeed reviewed the information and accept that it's correct. Talk about having a dog and barking ourselves, and I think that there is absolutely no choice. I know the first variation was under a force majeure, and apparently for some technical reason we can't have another force majeure, but it is effectively a force majeure if we don't do this. And don't be fooled into thinking you get a better deal if you go out there now looking for a new contract. You won't. You won't. You'll get way worse. And don't also think that going to landfill is a good alternative. It is not. It's going to be way more expensive. So I just don't think you've got a choice. And it's not a matter of us just wanting to shovel it on to ratepayers. We're all ratepayers. None of us want to pay more, but unfortunately, it's a fact of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rothfield, we'll put it to a vote. All in favour of the recommendation as it reads? Councillor Tassari, Rothfield, Fullerton, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent, and against Councillor Lark and Councillor Brown. Carried. Item number H7, draft governance rules to be presented by Ms Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council consideration of the draft governance rules 2020.
Mayor Tassari, I called for a division on that one. I put my hand up to call for a division prior to the next agenda item.
So Councillor Lark has called for a division on the vote of item number H6. So all in favour of the recommendation as it reads: Councillor Tassari, Rothfield, Fullerton, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent, and against Councillor Lark and Councillor Brown. Item number H7 to be presented by Ms Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council consideration of the draft governance rules 2020 and the draft election policy 2020, and approval to release both drafts to the community for a 2-week period. Both draft documents are consistent with the new Local Government Act 2020, and the Act mandates the governance rules must be adopted by Council by 1 September. The governance rules, when adopted, will supersede Council's meeting procedure, but also cover things such as the election period policy and enhanced approach to conflict of interest. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Jones. Can I have a councillor move and second the recommendation? Councillor Laserve and Councillor Kent to second. Councillor Laserve, would you like to speak too?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was fascinating reading, really, with the changes, and I think it's about an opportunity to release it to the public, and I think that's a fair call. There's nothing really, I think the details there, and people would get quite a bit of reading time out of it.
Thank you, Councillor Laserve. Fascinating reading. I'm not sure whether...
Well, I thought it was good. No, it was good. I enjoyed it.
Councillor Kent.
Yes, thank you for that, Mayor. I don't know whether to agree with Councillor Laserve's description or not. Basically, it's a governance requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Would anyone else like to? Councillor Whelan.
I'd just like to ask Councillor Laserve what other novels she reads.
I was sort of thinking that.
Well, I thought it was good reading. It's clear anyway. I'd be interested to hear what the community say.
Sorry, thank you. Councillor Lark.
Yeah, I just want to encourage the community to actually read it because there are implications for the community in relation to a whole lot of the clauses. So it's important to get meaningful feedback. For example, the clause requiring 3 councillors to sign off any rescission notice. I personally, as a councillor, disagree with that particular clause. There might be good reasons for it, but I just see it as another indication of constraint and control of individual councillors in that regard. But the important aspect is for the community to actually get involved and give us some meaningful feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this recommendation? No. Councillor Laserve, would you like to?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Actually, just to respond to Councillor Lark's, the part requiring 3 councillors to sign a rescission notice of motion, I thought that was practical. I think it doesn't stymie business within the council. It helps keep the flow going. If there's really a crisis and you want to have a rescission motion put in, I think it's important to have your fellow councillors on board. So I think that was a fair call. And I'd really also agree with you, encourage the community, have a read of it and give us their feedback. It's a good opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Laserve. We'll put it to a vote. All in favour of the recommendation as it reads. Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Item number H8, local law, to be presented by Ms Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm delighted to present this fascinating report also. And the purpose of this report is to consider the draft Administrative Local Law 2020. It's before councils, the new Local Government Act means our meeting procedure will be revoked and council's governance rules do not include the common seal. In short, the draft Administrative Procedures Local Law 2020 regulates the use of the common seal and makes provision for related administrative procedures. It also incorporates meeting offences and penalties which were also in council's current and soon to be revoked local law meeting procedure. The report recommends that council endorse the draft local law and release it for community feedback. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Jones. Can I have somebody move and second the recommendation as it reads? Ms Councillor Rothfield and seconded Councillor Whelan. Councillor Rothfield.
Oh, Mr Mayor, I'm delighted to actually support this recommendation. And anything that regulates the rules of us using the common seal must be a good rule and must be a good law. So no, I'm very supportive of the new the draft of the administrative procedure laws.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Whelan.
Oh, I'm okay.
You're okay. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this recommendation? Councillor Lark. You're on mute, Councillor Lark. That's 4 strikes now. That's it.
I just want to reiterate how important it is for the community to review and give us feedback. For example, in the rules or under these local laws, potentially 5 penalty points or $825 can be imposed for improper or disorderly conduct on any person attending a council meeting. So it goes far beyond just councillors. It does impact on the public. So if for example, the chair calls a person for being disorderly and it continues on, that person could quite easily be charged $825 for that particular offence, and follow up penalty points, I think of 2, another $330 if they don't leave the meeting. So there are implications for the community, and they should be aware of that and give feedback accordingly. Notwithstanding that the new Local Government Act does allow for those penalty points.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Is there anything in there, Councillor Lark, for councillors not putting on their microphone? Would anyone else like to speak to or against the recommendation as it reads? No? Councillor Rothfield, would you like to put it to a vote?
I will. I'd just like to just clarify that we are live streaming, and I think for the rest of our lives we'll probably be live streaming. So I'm not sure that's actually going to be really a real issue with regard to counting council meeting offences. But anyway, yes, put it to a vote.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. All in favour of the recommendation as it reads? Councillor Tessari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Item number H9, Community Asset Committees, to be presented by Ms Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to request council approval to transition the special committees of management that currently manage council's facilities from Section 86 committees to Community Asset Committees in line with the new Local Government Act. The report recommends that council do this. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Jones. Can I have somebody move and second this recommendation as it reads? Councillor Rothfield and seconded Councillor Ellis. Councillor Rothfield.
Look, I think we're going to be seeing more and more of these procedural type of motions because the Local Government Act is coming gradually into effect bit by bit, and that's basically we're modifying our own powers or our own processes to accord with the Act. So this is another situation where we're actually conferring with the new Local Government Act. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Ellis.
I agree with Councillor Rothfield's comments. I just want to point out, as I always do, the value of Section 86 committees to our shire and our ward. We couldn't keep everything, the parks and the halls, we couldn't afford to maintain them ourselves if there were no Section 86 committees. They are now moving to a different name. And I believe our officers have been working closely with them to enable them to transition to the new setup. And I believe they are going to be adequately resourced as well. I hope they keep doing the great things that they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this recommendation as it reads? No? Yeah, Councillor Lark.
Yes, I just want to say I'm looking forward to meeting the Pound Creek committee at some stage.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this recommendation as it reads? No? Councillor Rothfield, would you like to put it to a vote?
Yes, please.
Put it to a vote. All in favour of the recommendation as it reads. Councillor Tathari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Item number H10, delegated committees to be presented by Ms Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last one in today's suite of Local Government Act changes relates to delegated committees. And this report seeks council consideration to whether we need to establish what is a delegated committee under the new Local Government Act. We only have one committee that would have potentially met the new definition, and that's Council's Place Names Special Committee. But the report recommends that Council does not establish a Place Names delegated committee, but considers other options such as an advisory committee in the near future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Jones. Would anybody like to move or second? Councillor Brown, you would like to move the recommendation, and Councillor
Mr. Mayor, I have an alternate to move.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Can I look to governance to put that on the screen? Okay, so Councillor Brown, would you like to read your alternate, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. And it's very short. The motion is that Council does not establish a place names delegated committee, and 2, locality boundary changes are reported to Council for a decision.
Can I have somebody second that recommendation? Councillor Ellis, that's your hand up there. Yep. Okay, Councillor Brown, would you like to speak to your alternate?
Certainly. I have mixed feelings about the whole item because I'm currently chair of the Place Names Committee. And so in a sense, I'm trying to get rid of the committee that I actually chair. It's a bit of a weird situation. And I enjoy the work on the Place Names Committee, and all of the staff members on that committee are very knowledgeable in their areas, and they do a fantastic job. But nevertheless, it is a unique committee because it has delegated powers, and it's been caught up in the changes to the new Local Government Act. So it really impacts on this committee and perhaps not other committees in the same way. So I think, the committee does a couple of different things. It's involved with the naming of roads. That's one of the functions. And I think the staff get caught up on that because they get applications, they're ready to go with decisions, and they have to wait for the meeting to happen. So I'm happy that those kind of decisions are made under delegation. But I think the other thing they do is locality boundary changes. And they change, a property can change from one locality into another. And that's a very significant decision. So I think that really should be made by councillors, and that reports come to council for decision.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor Tathari. The Place Names Committee is one of the hardest working committees that I was ever involved with. They do a lot of great work. One of the main functions they do is make sure that streets are named and houses are numbered so that emergency services can get there as swiftly as possible. They do a few other things too, and I'm glad that all those functions will still be done with due diligence and that without having a committee to actually do it. I agree with Councillor Brown that there's a batching effect from having things go to council meetings on a monthly basis. They need to get things done more swiftly. And I totally agree with the need for council to have the final say on the locality boundaries. There was an incident, well, it became an incident many years back when parts of Glen Forbes suddenly became Rhinestone almost overnight. And it took that community 8 years to actually become part of Glen Forbes again. Yeah, glad to know that we will still have the final say and be able to publicise any changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Would anyone else? Councillor Rothfield.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, I recall that Rhinestone one, and I totally agree with Councillor Ellis and support the amended motion. I'd just like to point out that it is an alternative motion, not an alternate motion. Alternate means we take turns off on. Alternative is an option, another choice. We get that wrong all the time, and it's 4 years we've been talking about it. We should not use the word alternate. It is alternative. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rothfield. Would anyone else like to speak to Councillor Brown's alternative motion? No? Okay. Councillor Brown, would you like to summarise your alternative motion or put it to a vote?
Well, Mr Mayor, I was just thinking about what Councillor Rothfield said and whether there's issues around my freedom to expression, to my right to use the word alternate or alternative. But happy to put it to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. All in favour of the alternative motion as it reads? Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Lasserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Okay, item number H11 and it's to be presented by Ms Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend Council resolve to appoint the named officers as authorised officers under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and approve the execution of the attached instrument of appointment and authorisations. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Jones. Can I have somebody move and second the recommendation? Councillor Rothfield, seconded Councillor Ellis. Councillor Rothfield.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Again, a procedural motion, really. It's just really specifying everybody who has individually been appointed. And it really, yes, it's something we must do every now and again.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Ellis.
Totally agree with Councillor Rothfield. This is just to make sure that the right people have the right delegations and our hard-working staff can keep doing the great job that they do. Keep at it.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Anybody else like to speak to or against the recommendation? No. Councillor Rothfield, put it to a vote.
Yes.
All in favour of the recommendation as it reads? Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Lasserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Item number H12 to be presented by Ms Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to correct an error in the contract award amount in the report for the award of tender number 20008 on Peggy Railway Station Extension and Glazing that was presented to the Ordinary Council meeting on the 17th of June 2020. This report recommends that Council note the error in the contract amount in the previous resolution and award contract number 20008 for the total contract sum of $237,100 plus GST of $23,710.
Thank you, Ms Kennedy. Can I have somebody move and second? Councillor Fullerton and seconded Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Fullerton.
Right, once again, it's only procedural, so happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. Councillor Rothfield.
I don't think I'd call it procedural, but never mind. It's nice that it's actually, for once, our way. Yeah, so from what I read here anyway, I should have read, 237 instead of 265. Yay, we win. But you know what? everybody makes mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with making a mistake. And I totally support, all of us. We're all human, and good luck. And it's lovely to see it all transparent and out there. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Rothfield. Councillor Lott.
Thank you, Mayor Tassari. This was simply an inadvertent inclusion of the contingency amount in the internal project management costs, which shouldn't have been included for the tender purposes. So a simple matter to be corrected.
Thank you, Councillor Lott. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this recommendation? Councillor Fullerton, would you like to put it to a vote?
For a procedural mistake, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. All in favour of the recommendation as it reads: Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Lasserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. That brings us to the conclusion of items needing councillor reports or councillors' reports. So now statutory reports. Can I have a councillor move and second that the agenda items I1 to I3 be considered as a block? Councillor Fullerton and Councillor Ellis. All in favour of Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Lasserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. None, I'll just turn my page. Would any councillors like to speak to any of the reports? No. I request that a councillor, can I have somebody move and second that the recommendations in the attached agenda items I1 to I3 be adopted? Can I have somebody move and second? Councillor Rothfield and second Councillor Fullerton. All in favour? Councillor Tassari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Lasserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. Urgent business. We have none. Okay, that brings us almost to the end of the meeting. So I just announced that our next meeting, Council is monitoring and implementing the COVID-19 pandemic response and restrictions set out by the state and federal governments. Council will be pausing still community connection sessions for the coming months. The next special council meeting will be held virtually on the 29th of July 2020, commencing at 11 a.m. It will be open to the public via live streaming. The next ordinary council meeting will be held virtually on the 19th of August 2020, commencing at 11 a.m. It will be open to the public via live streaming. Sorry, I'm just sorry, 2 seconds. Sorry. Thank you for your patience. The sad thing is we actually rehearsed this and I still had to clarify it. So I now move a motion that the meeting be closed to members of the public under section 3.1F of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider this item as it deals with, and F is personal information, being information which, if released, would result in unreasonable disclosure of information about any person or their personal affairs. If I could have a councillor move and second that we close that. Councillor Lark.
Councillor Tassari, can I clarify one point? With the next ordinary meeting, is that 11 a.m. or 1 p.m?
Yeah, but the Councillor Lark is talking about the ordinary meeting, which will be 1. It is 1 p.m, Councillor Lark. That is a good pickup. So that will deduct one of your fines from not putting your microphone on. Thank you very much. So if I can move that motion that we close the meeting for the personal information, Councillor Rothfield seconded.
Councillor Tisari, can I just clarify something? It does state here that the ordinary council meeting is at 1 o'clock, but there is a special council meeting at 11 o'clock, which I'm assuming is the budget meeting.
Yes,
So is it 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock?
1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, the ordinary council.
Councillor,
No, the
Councillor
special.
the special meeting
11?
is at 11 o'clock.
That's what it says. It says the special council meeting at 11 and it says the ordinary council meeting at 1. So that we're correct.
So yeah, what I'm reading is different. So you're correct, Councillor Rothfield, and you're correct, Councillor Lark. So 2 credit points, or 1 credit point each. So can I now have somebody move and second the motion to close the meeting to discuss personal information? If I could, Councillor Ellis, and seconded Councillor Kent. All in favour of Councillor Tisari, Lark, Rothfield, Fullerton, Brown, Laserve, Whelan, Ellis and Kent. Carried. So I now thank you all for viewing our live streaming of our ordinary meeting. I hope you were entertained. There was actually some funny bits in there that'll probably end up on the bloopers list somewhere, but thank you all. And I look forward to seeing you all again at our next special meeting in July the 29th at 11 o'clock, and then also for our ordinary meeting on the 19th of August at 1 o'clock. Thank you all.